Welcome to Center One fans, and today I want to talk about the death of Nuance and Bleach. Now, I'm not going to be talking about Bleach's nuance in writing. What I'm going to be talking about are the opinions about certain characters or aspects of Bleach that whenever I mention them or I see other people mention them, there seem to be comments that completely miss what is said or what is being conveyed. So prepare for some hot takes that you probably won't like. Just to give you an idea, especially if you're new here, I've made it very clear on this channel that I do not like Renji, Sajin, or Iba. I made one extremely old video about Sajin, and it probably should be redone at some point because it's that bad, and the Renji one isn't very popular. With that said, let's get to it. Orihime Inoue. I want to talk about Orihime first because I made a comment a couple videos back mocking Arrancar Saga Orihime in my defense of Hinamori video, which I was rightfully challenged on and had a very nice conversation with plenty of people in the comments, so don't take this as any sort of attack on that. What I want to make clear, and I say as much in the Hinamori video, I only dislike Orihime in the Arrancar Saga. I overall love Orihime as a character, and I think Kubo wrote her well. The anime does a poor job of correctly displaying her attributes at times, but it's still a relatively accurate portrayal of her character. However, this is the nuanced bit of it. I can love a character overall, and even think they are well written and still take umbrage with certain aspects of their character arc or dislike a portion of that character arc, while still acknowledging its importance. Outside media examples would be Dexter Morgan. Dexter Morgan is one of my favorite characters in all of fiction, but however, I can't stand his arc in Season 6 because I feel he acts out of character quite a bit that season. This is in spite of Nebraska being like a top 3 episode for me, yet it's in arguably the worst season. Orihime's arc is that for me. Orihime, who is a selfless person, goes through tons of selfish behavior in the Arrancar Saga at the worst times. Orihime becomes jealous of Rukia and distracted from what she needs to do at the start of the arc, which is to focus on supporting others. But she doesn't know how and envy Rukia's ability to be a support system mainly for Ichigo. She feels left behind. This is out of, and which was correctly pointed out to me, her lack of self-worth, which was not by choice, but due to bullying most of her life. But you know who also feels left behind in that same arc? Chad. Ichigo saves Chad's life and then brushes him off at the start of the arc, which makes Chad feel useless, weak, and as if he lost the trust of Ichigo to watch his back. Chad, however, not only understands the dire nature of the upcoming war, but willfully makes the choice to get better instead of sulk. He prostrates himself before Urahara and asks to be trained. Orihime had to be brought to Kisuke, and only after seeing Chad training asked for the same. She's falling behind everybody like Chad and Rukia and is struggling to keep up due to her lack of initiative. This is great writing for her character. She starts training with Rukia in Soul Society, but then is sadly kidnapped and is unfortunately put in a terrible situation where she's being mentally abused just like Momo was. I do not blame Orihime for falling for any of Aizen's tricks, nor the circumstances that led to Orihime being the way she is, because frankly, I love the lighthearted sweetness that she brings to the series. However, the one singular line that pissed me off to no end and started my dislike of her in this arc was the question, why? The gang breaks into Wako Mundo, for which Ukiura informs Orihime of what she already felt, and she shockingly asks the question, why? In the last arc, they kicked down the doors of the afterlife to save Rukia, for whom they barely knew. What part of you is surprised that they would not come to Wako Mundo to save you? She didn't even consider it due to her own lack of self-worth, as some would put it. That feels out of character for her, to think that she is somehow less cherished. It wasn't out of logical thinking, it was out of self-pity. I'll explain why it's self-pity and not simply just her low self-esteem. Orihime knows Ichigo, she knows Chad, Uri, and Rukia. Rukia took her for private training to the Soul Society, got permission and all. And nowhere in your mind did you wonder if they would come for you? Then once Ichigo does kick down the doors of this afterlife to save her, she doubts Ichigo's intentions to save her, and that becomes the most important thing for her. She cares more about his intentions than him actually rescuing her, even putting it over Ichigo's own safety. Ichigo takes on 2 separate stray attacks to save her mid-fight, and she doubts him. He even speaks to her and apologizes about the mask and gives her reassurance mid-fight that it is still him there. And she says in her own head, and I quote, Then I saw him in that mask and I wasn't sure he was there for me. That selfishness within the context of the direness of this entire war was so human. It's probably exactly what a young girl in her situation might think, and I hated it. And she fixes this though. After Nell snaps her back into it, she realizes how selfish she's being and then puts Ichigo back in front of herself. But without this growth, without her overcoming her own powerlessness and selfish emotions, we wouldn't get the Lost Agent arc Orihime and the Thousand Year Blood War Orihime. It's one part of a character that I like. One part of a character that is better written than the other big three female protagonists. One part of a character that Kubo took the time to give more development to than a lot of his other characters that needed it. There's nothing wrong with me hating her thoughts and actions in that section. That's called nuance. Next, I want to talk about Sajin. I dislike Sajin Komamura quite a bit, that it borders on almost hating the character. Now, this is where the topic of the video really applies about nuance. I hate Sajin as a character, but that does not mean I think he's poorly written. My like or dislike for a character has to do with my like or dislike of a character. That has no bearing on how I feel about their writing. For example, take one outside of Bleach. Danzo Shimura is terribly written and also a bad character that I hate. Light Yagami in Death Note is a terrible person, but well written. I like his character and he entertains me. That's the nuance that is missed. The reason I dislike Sajin isn't for his writing, it's because he's a bootlicker. I'm from a country that commits terrorist acts upon civilians in other places, and sometimes its own people, and violates our most sacred laws for personal gain in an entire political atmosphere that kowtows to whatever the government or talking head says. So my personal feelings about Sajin comes from my own personal feelings about bootlickers. He admits to not feeling right about the execution, but then doubles down on his loyalty to Yamamoto and the Serete because of justice. But he actually has no clue what that is, by his own admission. When confronted by his supposed best friend about why he thinks the Soul Society is a good and just place, his only response is that Yamamoto, one singular aspect of the Serete, was nice to him. He disregards all the people who made fun of him, who were mean to him, and all the atrocities committed by the Serete in some vain notion to get moral superiority. So the real answer to what justice is, a question that Sajin doesn't have an answer to, is pretty much to continue the status quo. But he has no problem telling his friend that what he's doing is wrong, even though Sajin does nothing for others and is willing to sit idly by while evil rules. He even complains about the concept of revenge, for which is his complete driving force in the Thousand Year Blood War, also making him a hypocrite. Sajin then falls prey to it the same way Tosen did. That is great writing, it's poetic from Kubo. However, that doesn't mean I have to like Sajin for it. If Tosen is wrong, then Sajin is also wrong for seeking revenge. They are the same, whether you want to think that or not. Kubo was on fire when he wrote that. I can like things about Sajin. I love his Zanpakuto, it's in my top 10 favorite characters. This is what nuance looks like. Finally, the new anime. As some may have gleaned from my posts or reviews, I'm not the biggest fan of the new anime, or the game Rebirth of Souls. The Thousand Year Blood War has been good, I don't deny it. Season 1 was immaculate. The Blade Is Me is amazing. So I by no means think the anime is terrible. However, there are plenty of legitimate complaints that can be levied at the new series and the game. The problem I see is this swing to a toxic positivity, which as someone who has been in this fandom a long time and was on the front lines against the internet hate campaigns against Bleach for a decade, I get wanting to praise this series and see it shine. But proper criticism of the series and its other media is healthy and allows for a better product. Wanting a lifeless remake of the series won't be good for it. Pretty colors and new in and of itself doesn't mean it will be good. Bad games aren't good for the series. Anime content that contradicts other media and canon is never good, just ask the Star Wars fanbase. People will say that our opinions don't matter because we aren't the main market or that it's Japanese product. Don't let that crappy argument fool you. Companies want money from all their markets and their demographics. It all matters. Biggest example of this is the game. Rebirth of Souls can only get better or worse from the more noise that is made. The less play it gets, two things will likely happen. They stop supporting the game and it's over, or they improve it. Just look at Redditors after one patch and one DLC character. After radio silence for 2 months, it brought out posts of "the game is saved." This is weeks and weeks after denying that the game was never in trouble to begin with. That is toxic positivity. The patch didn't fix the main issues with the game, and they pandered to a general audience, not specifically the Bleach one. So that kills the "it's a Japanese product" argument. Something is not always better than nothing. Thank you guys for listening. If you did not like my opinions, I'm sorry. Those are my opinions. If you liked them, let me know. If you don't like them, let me know. All right? Remember to like, subscribe, share, comment. Check out my other videos. Love y'all. Have a good day. Bye.